Today, we are going to be talking about companies of one, and we are going to be talking about flywheels. These are two topics that resonate with me as a business owner of a SaaS company, also as somebody who's done agency work for the past couple of years, and also somebody who's been in the entertainment game of uploading content for a while to different platforms and failing, and uploading it to my own platforms and failing in different ways and finding ways to be successful. I qualify a company of one as any company that's smaller than two people. And even small companies would fall under this umbrella of a lot of the learnings that I think I'm trying to capture from this particular slideshow. So let's get into it. So to start off this presentation, I'd like to start with the allegory of a cannonball. Let's say that you are a spry young cannonball. As you get ready to get fired out of the cannon, you reach the maximum arc in your cannon arc, and you think to yourself, where am I going to land? Was all this effort worth it? Did I do anything of note with my life? Looking back, you're asking all these big questions, but unfortunately you don't get much time to consider them before you crash 20 feet away from your target. I think that posting content on the internet is very similar to being both a cannonball and being the cannoner. You spend all of this time creating, let's say that, let's switch between the two. So you spend all your time creating this cannonball and you put all this effort into it, and then you just shoot it and you hope that you hit your target, and it flies off into the darkness and you have no idea where it went. You either posted it somewhere where you think that a lot of people will receive it, or no one will see it, or maybe they won't share it with their friends, and you don't really know if your idea is going to work out really well. But then you also, weirdly enough, feel like the cannonball, because you can introspect how your piece is doing. You can see people watching it or people consuming it and think to yourself, oh, I must be doing well in terms of reaching out to maybe a bigger audience, if a bigger audience is what you're looking for, but also being able to say, like, I am on target. And then you just kind of repeat this over and over, especially in the landscape that we built today that I'm about to talk about. So I think that there are two targets, that the two holes. I'm just realizing I probably should have gone with the word targets instead of holes for this. But I think that there are two targets mainly that you can aim your cannon at, both with differing pros and cons when it comes to specifically kind of online content or capturing things that you're doing in the real world and putting them online. So the first option is the shallow hole. The shallow hole is your own website. In a lot of ways, your own website, your Squarespace or your Next.js site or your GitHub Pages site that you built from scratch and never touch, it's the shallow hole. You were the only one who's posting there, but you are relatively confident that no one is going to be able to find it. It seems pretty obvious that, like, even if they did know where to find it, where would they go? Would they remember to come back to it? Will they remember your domain? The answers to these questions are probably not. So what you end up seeing is a lot of, especially in the space that I am in development, you'll see a lot of people make one or two or at max like 5 blogs on their website, and then they'll just disappear forever again. You won't see them again, and they'll be hanging out in option 2, which is the bottomless pit. The bottomless pit, it's social media. In a lot of ways, it's YouTube. It's these sites that we spend most of our time on the internet on, the top internet websites. And there's a reason that these websites are so popular. They do a really, really good job of supplying nearly endless content for people, and being able to get the content that you want into your body as soon as possible seems to be something that consumers care a lot about. So they can remember to subscribe or follow you on these particular websites, but they won't necessarily stay with you as a customer, right? As a business customer, or they might tell their friends again about you and stuff like that too. And there are benefits to posting on these platforms. These platforms do a really good job of making sure that creators have some of the tools that they need to be able to succeed. But then they also are infinite voices, and there's no way that you can stand out from amongst the rabble unless you are in the 0.001%, in which case you're probably not watching this video anyway. But, and this is more opinion based, I think the thing is that you do need to post to be competitive in this economy. I don't even necessarily think it's a thing about coding or writing or making video or making content or not making content. There has to be some way for you to participate on the internet, because the way that the internet is laid out is it is in such a way where if you don't post, you don't exist. If you're sitting in a physical cafe, and I got this from a book by Gia Tolentino, whose name I'm slipping on. If you're sitting in a cafe and people are around you, they'll know that you're there, even if you're not saying anything. But on the internet, people don't know that you're there. If you don't say anything, if you don't do anything, you may as well not exist. And that's unfortunate, because the internet is a huge network of communication between different computers all across the world and different people behind those computers, sometimes groups of people, sometimes individuals. And the thing that you really want to capture is non-linearity. So let's describe a little bit what linearity is, right? Because I think about this term, it gets thrown around a lot. It's very popular these days because people are talking about anti-fragility and stuff like that. But to me, non-linearity means that you are not stuck on a path where you already know the causation thing that's going to happen. So like if you are putting a chicken in the oven, you know that the chicken is going to get cooked after a certain amount of time. And then you know after an amount of time after that, it's going to get burnt. If you are getting a haircut, you know that the barber is going to put clippers on your head and he's going to shave your head, and then you're going to have a brand new hairdo. Those are like linear things. Those are things that are very causal, and the effect is very closely linked in time to the cause. And basically what that means is that you are, doing something where the outcome is expected. But the problem is, if you want to create something new, if you want to create, whether it's an open source package or a video or a new type of whatever food that nobody's ever seen before, you have to introduce it in a way that the audience receives it in a non-linear fashion. Because if it was already linear, then people would already know how to get it or how to do it. So you want to post with non-linearity, and you can tell my beautiful modern art piece drawing here that got cut off at the bottom. But basically what's happening is that the path of business growth in the internet isn't a straight line, because the internet in and of itself is a network of nodes that doesn't have a start or an end point. So you actually think that, I think that the world is a lot like this too, right? Where you don't know if you're going to run into somebody that you like, or you don't know if you're going to move to a different place, or you don't know how things are going to play out for you in the long term or the short term, or if a meteor is going to come down and hit all of us tomorrow. So the world is already nonlinear. So I find that leaning into nonlinear kind of things that you choose to do gives you both resilience, and it also gives you a chance to capture gains that you wouldn't see directly in front of you and that you can't expect. So in sum, the internet has democratized ideas, allowing you to get really good at one thing and introduce it to people who need it elsewhere in time and space. So because of the way that writing and video and code are stored on the internet in particular, they don't degrade with time. So if you record something in 2005 and then somebody finds value of it because they got either it surfaced in an algorithm for them, or they actively went and searched for the thing that you were talking about, the initial effort that you put in will be the thing that people are ending up seeing later. And that's very powerful, because that basically means that you can put effort into something knowing that elsewhere in time and space, whether it's a country halfway across the planet, somebody might be able to find what you created and find some value and use out of it. So a counter example would be, let's say that you were in 1776 and you're at the signing of the Declaration of Independence with all your boys, and you want to talk about Beyblade, but no one here is particularly interested in Beyblade. So you say, hey, you want to see my sick Beyblade skills? I've been working on them for a while. And someone's like, you're good, right? So if your audience is limited to your immediate time and space, ideas that you might think aren't validated would fall flat but they're not necessarily bad ideas. They might just not be around the right audience. And that doesn't just have to do with content. That can do with inventions and creations. That can do with consistent work. That can do with things that you aspire to do and things that you are already doing. And we'll talk about both. So, in my opinion, the best strategy is to post a lot at as high of a quality that you can reasonably muster. And I think that you can think of posting a lot as X and high of a quality that you can muster as Y. And these two are multivariable equations where you sacrifice X to make Y and you sacrifice Y to make X. And, you know, people will build whole companies and organizations around just managing to make sure that the supply chain X also meets the standards of quality that they promise to their customer Y. But as a one-person business on, you know, a website, you don't really have that option. Another thing, and this is more of a non-linear thing, most of the work that you post will live at zero, but the outliers will skyrocket, which of course means that the optimal strategy is to post a lot. So you can see that like most of your ideas, again, get cut off, are at the bottom here, and they're not going to be worth much. And that thing you did at 3 a.m. one day is going to be huge. And we see this in terms of scientific discoveries. Alan Turing thought about the Turing machine while he was on a run. I know that in my own anecdotal personal life, a lot of the posts that I didn't think were going to do well did very well, and a lot of the posts that I thought were going to do really well did not well at all. So there's definitely a just undeniable randomness to the idea of what things will propel you to what you decide is success for your individual ideas. So again, it's Russian roulette. All of your ideas are kind of pitted against each other. You can end up building a portfolio, which is another great thing about posting a lot, so that all of your ideas start to help each other. But in general, you should think of your ideas as kind of, standalone. So, part 2, we just talked about how ideas are kind of nonlinear. We need to post as much as possible. We don't necessarily know if we should post on social media or we should post on our own website. We discussed the value of why bother posting in the first place, and we discussed what it's like to kind of create content on the internet. So I think that the next great step to talk about is what I've discovered from kind of posting and creating for a long time now, and from being a coder and participating in the open source space. And mainly that thing is to spread out your value proposition. So spreading out your value proposition means that you just don't want to lock up all of your value into just one moment. So you can think of it as like harvesting, where it's like you plant all these seeds and then you just hope that there's not a blight or a plague and just like all these cicadas come down and eat all your shit. You want to make sure that you have resilience in your systems and redundancy so that you can extract value, you have fallbacks, right? You diversify, and you do this with stocks, you do this with relationships, you do this with your, just many aspects of your life. Even your body has redundant elements inside of it. There are things that are not redundant, the heart, etc. But the body goes out of the way to add redundancy to those systems to make sure that they don't fail. So even then, you want to spread out your value proposition as wide as you can get it. And we can talk about how to do that as a one-person business without having to do more work, quote unquote. So you don't want to lock up your value, again, like I said, in the final product. You want to make sure that the whole experience is just really enjoyable. This is a pun to this image throughout. You want to make sure that it's like that you can if value is Y and your profit margin is X, you want to be able to increase the size of X as much as possible without affecting the quality and threshold of Y, because it generally does eat into Y too. So you ideally want to increase Y and X at the same time. So the question is, who is doing this really well? Who's capturing value? Who's figured out the way to take their value proposition and move it all across the experience, as opposed to just the end goal, just the final thing delivered. Who can we learn from? Who's mastered the art of the deal? Perhaps it's chefs. carpenters, master carpenters, could be. Maybe it's business moguls, people who are at the top of the investment banking pipeline, making hundreds of thousands of dollars a year. In my mind, it's gamers. Gamers.
2015. After his
we can see here that gamers are interesting because
it around Punko's neck to further rub
hold on, I'm gonna let this play out.
Oh, wow.
This gamer pop off.
Okay, the fans.
This is what we know gamers for. We know them for popping off. We know them for getting in each other's faces.
That could be a double yellow card. Internet. He's taking.
Absolutely lit. The thing is that like gamers do things for fun, right? Like the video game industry started out very much as an entertainment industry. And much like the movie industry or the music industry, people do make money making movies and music, but the methods that people make money through movies and music are, oh, we can use this camera to record our own stuff and then we can sell tickets for people to come. Gamers had the same idea with esports, but gamers also realized that the way that people play games is just kind of like a hanging out type thing. There's value spread across the whole game as opposed to let me drive 5 hours to go see the concert. And to talk about that, we need to talk about Twitch.television, Twitch.tv, and these four dudes who started Twitch in 2007. The guy on the far left here is Justin Kahn. It started out as Justin.tv, and they were just filming his life, and they were just running around looking at what Justin was doing from a day-to-day basis. And it turned out that people ate this up. This was something that people were actually very excited to see, which was very surprising, I'm sure, to these four. And as they branched out into gaming, and I'm not going to go into the whole history of Twitch.tv, but it transformed the ethos of the gamer from the pop-off gamer to gamers, but with money. Like Ninja, for example, making millions of dollars a year playing Fortnite. And it's not millions of dollars because, you know, in the traditional sense of like, oh, he's a CEO of a big oil company, or he's a lawyer who does, you know, foreclosure law or something like that, and he's been in the field for 15-20 years. He plays video games and he has a huge audience that watches him play video games, and he does sponsor deals and things like that too, because he has access to a huge audience. But, you know, as we've seen with people like Mr. Beast and stuff like that, if he wanted to, of course, he could very much sell his own product as well. So my argument for live streaming as it comes to small business is that it's basically improv for the stuff that you already do, whether that's cooking, going to Disneyland, or DJing. Live stream is basically improv for things that make you happy. So the steps to doing improv is that, you know, you go up on stage, you take a word, and then you just yes and. You basically riff. And live streaming is a lot like riffing. So you go live, you say whatever's on your mind, or you do something that you prepared, like your set, basically, or you do something that you've unprepared. So like you load up a game and you don't know if you're going to lose viewers or gain viewers or whatever. After stream, you review the VOD and you extract the highlights. And I've been doing this now for the past week and a half, and I've been just so impressed with how much extra content that I can basically put out on my own name without doing any extra work, because I had already recorded this VOD and I just need to kind of go back and grab stuff. And then you can upload those as individual highlights, clips, etc. that are standalone, and then also serve as a funnel back into your business. So every business has a product arm and a marketing arm, and as the individual highlights and clips either are searched for again directly or again just show up in people's feeds, people come back into the core business proposition, which is not even necessarily your stream if you're selling a product, right? Your stream is a vehicle to capture marketing, while also, again, giving you these small value packages along the way, so you don't have to just wait until the end thing. And we've seen this happen with coding, in particular with the you know, there's a lot of coding streamers who will build their project from end to end live, and that will show people that, oh, you can, like, this is how the sauce is made. People really like process, and not everybody. And I think that that's one of the reasons that people extract clips, is that you can just have 60 seconds of something tight, and then people can jump in and out and they can come and leave. So yeah, people either find, your VODs through SEO on the internet or recommendation, because again, remember the internet is a series of nodes, some of which are more densely connected than others, and your goal is to get your stuff densely connected, and your goal is to make evergreen stuff that will ideally funnel back into your whatever you decide your business proposition is. So then people tune into the next stream, making it more engaging when you go live, right? So this ... here it says that, like, people come back into the next stream. So we see that we created a flywheel here. So at the beginning, I promised talking about a flywheel. Basically, the whole point of a flywheel is that when it starts spinning, it uses its own momentum to create stronger spinning. So with the live stream, you go live, you say whatever's on your mind, you review the highlights, people find the highlights, they come back to the stream, which means that the next stream is going to be bigger, etc., etc., etc. And you don't always need to be chasing after bigger numbers. I do think that in general, flywheels reach a certain velocity where they are kind of self-sustaining. And that's, I think, the goal for any person who is running a small business, is a lifestyle business or a business that they are planning on selling or doing whatever, is that you should be looking for sustainability in your business model. So let's talk a little bit about the traditional model of content creation, or just creation in general. Is you have an idea, you do research, and you see if you have the skills and the resources, which is like money, or you are in the academic place to be doing this, or you have the skill to be doing this. You end up creating that idea, you post idea, and not on the internet. I mean, even before the internet, people, write academic papers. People do things where they want to expose the rest of their field, or just the field, to an idea that they've created. And then people either find your idea through direct searching or recommendation. But you can see that there's no flywheel here, right? So this searching or recommendation is where it ends. You have to continue to have ideas, and you have to continue to keep showing up. And I think the main value of live streaming is that you can kind of just go live and see what happens. A lot of the value just emerges out of the thing that you were going to be doing by yourself anyway. So again, extract value at every step, whether that's clips, blog posts, videos, things that go on the internet. If you're really lucky, you'll end up on live stream fails. Your blog, if it goes well, I think that things will go viral. I've had a few posts go really well on Hacker News that have been really nice. And in videos and stuff like that as well. So again, I think that the main word of the day, Sesame Street style, is resilience, because by diversifying your value, you become more resilient to the evolving world around you. And if you are trying to compete with not only massive businesses for entertainers like Netflix and stuff like that, and you're a TikToker, you also have to think about your own sustainability within your own business model. I think about this a lot with my own SaaS business. I think about it with my consulting business. I think about it with content creation in general, is that you really want to diversify the ways that people can either not necessarily find you, because I don't think that getting on every social media actually, again, drops your quality. But if you can find something that you can put a certain level of quality into as a baseline, and then use that as a leverage point to capture more value by not having to do more work, that's what I consider diversification at this point. So another benefit of live streaming, small benefit, is that you get a super short feedback loop. In programming, the compiler will immediately tell you if you've done something wrong. In Twitch streaming, the chat will immediately tell you if you've done something wrong. So it's kind of the same but different. So yeah, companies of one need all the help that they can get, because businesses need two things to survive. They need customers and they need profit. And if you are struggling, if you were struggling with one, you won't get to two. And the way to get one is really kind of expressing what your product's value is and getting it in front of as many people who could find value from that thing as possible. And the best way of doing that is, again, doing it in such a way that doesn't also take away from the product that you're working on, because sometimes you'll have to end up doing things that for your product that you don't want to do. And then as for the profit, one of the nice things about being a coder is that, like, code has just insane profit margins, because the cost per invocation is relatively low compared to making a shop that sells potpourri or some shit, like making a store that sells food has lower margins because they have to pay for things, and then they have to guess how many customers are going to come, because if they guess wrong, then they either don't have enough food and they have to turn away customers at the door, which is a bad business thing to do, or they have too much food that goes to waste. So you have to be able to also adjust your model to capture your profit based on your customers. And I think that with the live streaming flywheel model, you create more customers by not doing more work, and because the profit margins are pretty high. I've seen live streamers just upload stuff to the internet and I watch it like I eat it up like reality television or I eat it up for educational value. And it's because these streamers are just hanging out. They're not really planning these videos. So if anything, the vlog style of video is probably dead. You know what I mean? You have to go out and do something interesting and then record it and then come back to your hole and then edit it. And then at the end, you're like, oh, I didn't do something interesting enough. And then you have to go out the next day and do it again. Versus streaming is just kind of like rambling and then just kind of like going back in afterwards and being like, okay, the 20% of it that's actually valuable is this, and I'm just going to upload it. So a way to think about this is Chipotle. Utilize the drafts to your advantage, opening up the process to the end customer. When you go to Chipotle, you get to see it get made in front of you. You get to see the burrito happening in front of you, and you get to feel like you're a part of the experience. You get to feel like you have choice. You get to feel like you have autonomy. And that's what a lot of the live stream experience provides. It provides autonomy to the customer to interact with the producer, and it allows the producer to learn more about their consumers in a really kind of mutually beneficial way, with asterisks for the complete social anarchy that happens on the internet in terms of how people treat each other on the internet. So that's the end of this presentation. Again, the whole concept is that you want to make sure that your value is spread out as much as possible across your business. You do not want to be a cannonball. You want to make sure that when you shoot your shot, you're actually shooting a lot of shots, and you're shooting them at a very high chance of hitting the target that you want. So find whatever your product is, find a way to record elements of it. Of course, it doesn't have to be live streaming. I think actually you can capture a lot of these values by just recording yourself, but you do need to be able to go back after and see what parts of your process were interesting enough to share. So if you're doing that, the whole point of live streaming is why not just share the whole thing? And that's kind of what you're seeing in front of you. I will say that, that going forward, some of this stuff is going to be business on this stream, but a lot of it is just going to be stuff that I'm interested in terms of learning and learning in public, specifically through the tool Obsidian. So the upcoming topics on this live stream are going to be the history of binary numbers, the rise of fake plants and millennials. Do we need computers if we're just going to be computing in the cloud? And one that got cut off by my slideshow. I need to fix this. I don't know how to fix this. But whatever it is, I'm sure it's going to be cool. And I have a lot more ideas too. And some of it's going to be Obsidian. Some of it's going to be coding based. Some of it's going to be more like this, where it's going to be more presentation based. So come through to twitch.tv/Bramsies if you want to see this happening live. And finally, this video is sponsored also by me. I'm talking about small businesses and SaaS businesses. And the business that I built is called Stenography. It uses artificial intelligence to document your code. It specifically uses Codex and parses your code in real time. There's a Visual Studio Code extension that's really popular. It went #1 on Product Hunt. I'm pretty happy with where it turned out. It's really good for JavaScript and Python and languages like that, with more languages coming on the way. So check out stenography.dev for that. And thank you for watching.